I love Porsche, and I bet you do too. And you know what Porsche loves? Money. So it's no surprise that they lent their brains to these brands. Let's start with the Subaru Legacy B for Blitzen, a name that sounds like a German war tactic. And that's fitting because Porsche knows a thing or two about war, because Porsche design actually styled it. In the early 2000s, Subaru wanted to give its Japanese family sedan a bit more of a European flair, so they called in Porsche to help. The changes were as follows: subtle bodywork changes like cleaner bumpers, wheels that would be perfect on an Impreza STI if I do say so myself, and a more premium feeling interior. Then there's the Vauxhall or Opel, depends on where you live, Zafira, a collaboration between the engineers at Opel who developed the chassis, engine, suspension and design. The whole car was conceived at Weissach and developed by the Porsche engineering team.
The most famous Porsche designed part of the Zafira was the Flex 7 seating system,
which meant you could fold the third row seats into the floor, so you had more trunk space. And a fun fact, Zafira was actually displayed at the Porsche Museum for a while. The Mark I Seat Ibiza might be most proud of its Porsche DNA. Take a look at the engine, and there it is. It says System Porsche. And it wasn't lying. Porsche collaborated with Seat for its little 1.2 to 1.7 liter engines, and Porsche licensed their name to Seat for 7 German marks per car. What is cool is that Giugiaro handled the styling. Another thing, just check out that cool dash design on the pre-facelift models.
Please, if you're enjoying this video, why not like and subscribe to the channel as it helps me a lot. Don't forget to ring the bell, thanks.
Now let's leave the sunny Mediterranean and go to a colder communist hellhole, aka the Soviet Union, with, drumroll please, the Lada Samara, a car that made even the shitty Yugo look refined. In the 1980s, the Soviets wanted to modernize it for export, or whatever the Soviets were planning, probably agriculture, so they called Porsche. The information about Porsche's involvement is kinda scarce, but we do know that they helped with the cylinder head and other powertrain stuff. But that could never help anything that came from the Soviet Union, especially the cars. But they sold well and long, and that's all that matters to the Russians. Lada also took the engine and all-wheel drive system from the 959 and put it into the Dakar Rally Samara T3, which is brutal. I need some space to be patriotic now, with the absolute Czech classic, alongside beer, the Škoda Favorit. In the early 1980s, Škoda wanted to build a modern hatchback to replace its ancient relics like the 742, which sold alongside the Favorit for a few years, and they desperately needed help, so they sent the car to Porsche. Their engineers worked on the suspension of the engine, geometry of the front axle, and the overall noise refinement. This was different than with previously mentioned cars, as they physically tested the prototypes at Weissach, Porsche's own development center. Which sounds a bit funny if you think about it. A little commie hatchback doing laps where the 959 was perfected. The result was the Favorit, a car that actually handled somewhat decently, had a 1.3 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that made 68 horsepower at its most powerful form. I rattled terribly before Volkswagen saved Škoda and pulled them from the Stone Ages. Now back to Western Europe. The Renault Clio V6 Phase 2, a car that looks like a normal hatchback until you come around to the front and notice that there is no engine. Well, that's because the engine is where the back seats should be. Porsche didn't build it, but their input in the car's 2.9 liter V6 Renault Laguna engine bumped power up from 227 to 252 horsepower. Plus it was French, so that guarantees goofiness. The Mercedes 500e looked like an early 90s E-Class, but much fatter and bloated, in a very good looking way though. The fat, however, was for a purpose, that being performance. The stance was lower and it had wider fenders. That's because every single 500e was hand-built by Porsche in Zuffenhausen. Mercedes wanted to stuff a 5-liter V8 from the SL into the E-Class, but they ran into a problem. It didn't fit the assembly line or the chassis, so they decided to contact their buddies over at Porsche. Porsche re-engineered the suspension, widened the chassis so it could fit the 5-liter V8, and even hand-built the cars for them at the same factory in which they made bodies for the 356s. Speaking of Porsche building someone else's car, the Audi RS2 Avant might be the most famous example. Another 90s car with Porsche's handprints all over it. Audi brought the 2.2 liter turbo 5-cylinder and gave it to Porsche to play with. And they tuned the turbo, the suspension, and come closer and look behind the wheels. It says Porsche on the brake calipers, and powered by Porsche on the intake manifold. They even used exterior parts from the 911, like mirrors, Porsche cup wheels, which I'm a massive fan of, and the indicators from a 993. It looked like a family wagon, but it could out-accelerate the McLaren F1 in a 0 to 30 battle. By now it's clear that Porsche's engineering department will work with anyone if they're willing to fork out the cash. So I wanted to end this video with the debut Tosca or Chevrolet Epica, which was not epic or Tosca, whatever that means. It's a dreadful Korean sedan everyone forgot existed, and understandably so. It was slow and looked super fucking boring, but at least under the hood it had an inline 6 developed by Porsche engineering, so there's that. But this time not tuned, but designed. Even the source of all information wholly, Wikipedia, has it listed as a Porsche engine, which means about 150 horsepower from the 2.5 liter inline 6, which was the most powerful power plant offer.